Hello there, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Scary Stories with Bob, the series where you join me as I read to you short, scary stories. So please, make yourself comfortable and let's get ready to get our scare on. Our first story is called The Ghost with the Bloody Fingers. A businessman arrived at a hotel late one night and asked for a room. The room clerk told him the hotel was all filled up. "There is only one empty room," he said, "but we don't rent that one because it is haunted." "I'll take it," said the businessman. "I don't believe in ghosts." The man went up to the room. He unpacked his things and he went to bed. As soon as he did, a ghost came out of the closet. Its fingers were bleeding and it was moaning, "Bloody fingers! Bloody fingers!" When the man saw the ghost, he grabbed his things and ran. The next night, a woman arrived very late. Again, all the rooms were taken except the haunted room. "I'll sleep there," she said. "I'm not afraid of ghosts." As soon as she got into bed, the ghost came out of the closet. Its fingers still were bleeding. It still was moaning, "Bloody fingers! Bloody fingers!" And the woman took one look and ran. A week later, another guest arrived very late. He also took the haunted room. After he unpacked, he got out his guitar and he began to play. Soon, the ghost appeared. As before, its fingers were bleeding and it was moaning, "Bloody fingers! Bloody fingers!" The man paid no attention. He just kept strumming his guitar. But the ghost kept moaning and its fingers kept bleeding. Finally, the guitar player looked up. "Cool it, man," he said. "Get yourself a Band-Aid." And on to our next story. Our next story is called Something Was Wrong. One morning, John Sullivan found himself walking along a street downtown. He could not explain what he was doing there, or how he got there, or where he had been earlier. He didn't even know what time it was. He saw a woman walking toward him and stopped her. "I'm afraid I forgot my watch," he said, and smiled. "Can you tell me the time?" When she saw him, she screamed and ran. Then John Sullivan noticed that other people were afraid of him. When they saw him coming, they flattened themselves against a building or ran across the street to stay out of his way. "There must be something wrong with me," John Sullivan thought. "I better go home." He hailed a taxi, but the driver took one look at him and sped away. John Sullivan did not understand what was going on, and it scared him. "Maybe somebody at home can come and get me," he thought. He found a telephone and called his wife. But a voice he did not recognize answered. "Is Mrs. Sullivan there?" he asked. "No, she is at a funeral," the voice said. "Mr. Sullivan was killed yesterday in an accident downtown." Our next story is called The Wreck. Fred and Jeannie went to the same high school, but they met for the first time at the Christmas dance. Fred had come by himself, and so had Jeannie. Soon, Fred decided that Jeannie was one of the nicest girls he had ever met. They danced together most of the evening. At 11 o'clock, Jeannie said, "I have to leave now. Can you give me a ride?" "Sure," he said. "I've got to go home too." "I accidentally drove my car into a tree on my way over here," Jeannie said. "I guess I wasn't paying attention." Fred drove her to the head of Brady Road. It was in a neighborhood he didn't know very well. "Why don't you drop me off here?" Jeannie said. "The road up ahead is in really bad condition. I can walk from here." Fred stopped the car and held out some tinsel. "Have some," he said. "I got it at the dance." "Thank you," she said. "I'll put it in my hair," and she did. "Would you like to go out sometime? To a movie or something?" Fred asked. "That would be fun," Jeannie said. After Fred drove off, he realized that he didn't know Jeannie's last name or her telephone number. "I'll go back," he thought. "The road can't be that bad." He drove slowly down Brady Road through a thick woods, but there wasn't a sign of Jeannie. As he came around a curve, he saw the wreckage of a car ahead. It had crashed into a tree and had caught fire. Smoke was still rising from it. As Fred made his way to the car, he could see someone trapped inside, crushed against the steering column. It was Jeannie. In her hair was the Christmas tinsel he had given her. Our last short scary story is called One Sunday Morning. Ida always went to the 7 o'clock Sunday morning service at her church. Usually she heard the clanging of the church bells while she was eating breakfast. But this morning, she heard them while she was still in bed. That means I'm late, she thought. Ida jumped out of bed, quickly dressed, and left without eating or looking at the clock. It was still dark outside, but it usually was dark at this time of year. Ida was the only one on the street. The only sounds she heard were the clatter of her shoes on the pavement. Everybody must already be in church, she thought. Ida took a shortcut through the cemetery. Then she quietly slipped into the church and found a seat. The service had already begun. When she caught her breath, Ida looked around. The church was filled with people she had never seen before. But the woman next to her did look familiar. Ida smiled at her. It's Josephine Kerr, she thought. But she's dead. She died a month ago. Suddenly, Ida felt uneasy. She looked around again. As her eyes began to adjust to the dim light, Ida saw some skeletons in suits and dresses. This is a service for the dead, Ida thought. Everybody here is dead, except me. Ida noticed that some of them were staring at her. They looked angry, as if she had no business there. Josephine Kerr leaned toward her and whispered, "Leave right now after the benediction, if you care for your life." When the service came to an end, the minister gave his blessing. "The Lord bless you and keep you," he said. "The Lord makes his face shine upon you." Ida grabbed her coat and walked quickly toward the door. When she heard footsteps behind her, she glanced back. Several of the dead were coming toward her. Others were getting up to join them. "The Lord lift up his countenance to you," the minister went on. Ida was so frightened she began to run. Out the door she ran, with a pack of shrieking ghosts at her heels. "Get out!" one of them screamed. Another shouted, "You don't belong here!" and ripped her coat away. As Ida ran through the cemetery, a third grabbed the hat from her head. "Don't come back!" it screamed, and shook its arm at her. By the time Ida reached the street, the sun was rising and the dead had disappeared. Did this really happen? Ida asked herself. Or have I been dreaming? That afternoon, one of Ida's friends brought over her coat and hat, or what was left of them. They had been found in the cemetery, torn to shreds. And that does it for this episode of Scary Stories with Bob. I hope you enjoyed these stories, and hopefully I didn't give you too much of a fright. And please like this video, please subscribe to my channel, as I'll have even more videos coming soon. So until then, I will be seeing you again soon.